Priority 1 message from Starfleet coming in on secured channel.
You are listening to the TrekRanks podcast, a member of the Tricorder Transmissions Podcast Network. This is episode 19, featuring the top 5 Ben Sisko episodes. Welcome, Star Trek fans. I am Jim Moorhouse, and I am the host of the TrekRanks podcast. And tonight, we have one of our rare series-specific topics. And I love this one, because tonight we're cutting through all the BS, breaking down our top 5 Ben Sisko episodes. So it's a DS9 only topic, and one of the reasons we're doing that right now is because as we record this, it is January 2018, and we are celebrating the 25-year anniversary of DS9's debut. And we love DS9 here at TrekRanks, and because I love to relay some of the numbers of the 19 previous episodes we've done on TrekRanks, I'm always talking about our stats. Just want to let everybody know this is our second DS9 only topic, and we also have one TOS only topic, one TNG only topic, and one Voyager only topic. So this is the 5th time in 20 episodes that we've had a series specific topic. And actually, that's more than I thought there was. It's like 25%. So that seems high. But all right, enough of that. Let's introduce our awesome guests tonight, who are both coming to us live from the England sector. First up is a first-time participant, someone we've been looking forward to get on for a while. He's Rick Everson, and he's the host of the 10 Forward podcast. Rick, welcome to the show. You there, buddy?
I am here. Hi, Jim. Nice to be on.
All right, coming through loud and clear from England, and our other host, also in England, is returning for his 3rd round of TrekRanks. He is, as I like to call him, Mr. Reliant. It's Carlos Miranda. Carlos, welcome back.
Thank you very much for having me. I feel honored. Has anyone else been on 3 times?
This is you are the first 3-time person.
Wow.
I wasn't gonna say that because I know it would stoke your ego too much.
Well, you know I'm a little bit competitive, so.
Yes, you are. I love it. That's why we keep having you back. All right, so let's jump into our quick TrekRanks reset discussion, which I always like to do at the top of the show. General order number 1 here at the TrekRanks podcast, and that is that we love to rank Trek, and we do that via some deep dive topics to really just get the conversation started. So hopefully when you listen, you have some fun with it. Maybe think about a few episodes or ideas that you haven't thought about for a while. And nothing would make me happier than hearing about someone going back to watch some old episodes because of the conversation that we're about to have. So, as my good friend, the Vulcan Master, likes to remind us each week, the main driver for all of our discussions here at TrekRanks Podcast is
infinite diversity.
In infinite combinations.
That's right. Our mantra here is no wrong answers. Not about being right or definitive, Carlos, in any way. It's not competitive.
Why did you say that to Rick?
It's just about sharing the things we love about Star Trek. And this is a no nitpicking zone, so we're not going to do that here. Anyway, we love all Trek, from TOS to TNG, straight through to Enterprise and the Kelvin timeline, and now Discovery. So it's all fair game here on the TrekRanks podcast. We use episodes as our shorthand, but the 13 films are always in play. Although not tonight, because there's no DS9 film. Damn it.
Shame.
We wish we could get one of those. So I know that's a lot, but I like to always do a little reset on the show before we get going. So before we get into our level 1 diagnostic, let's quickly power up the Argus array so our listeners know exactly how they can message us.
Hailing frequencies are open.
All right, you can check us out on the World Wide Web at TrekRanks.com and at the TricorderTransmissions.com. And if you'd like to leave us a message with your own picks, you can do that at 609-512-LLAP. That's 609-512-5527. And I will give you that number again at the end of the show. And you can also find the Tricorder Transmissions on Facebook, and you can reach me on Twitter at TrekRanks and also at Enterprise Extra. So hopefully we'll hear from you, because this show is better when we hear from you. All right, to wrap it up, Rick and Carlos, we'd like to tell everybody how they can get a hold of you. Rick?
I am on Twitter at TrekFanRick, and I'm also available on Twitter on my podcast one at 10 Backward.
That's right. And I've listened to that podcast. It is great. And you just changed your Twitter handle, right? Because it used to be Nerd Rick.
I did, and now and again I just like to mix it up, change it around, and I went with just wanted to emphasize the Trek a little bit.
Trek fan Rick.
Yeah.
Love it. All right. How about you, Carlos?
I'm mostly just on Twitter, and it's at Double Mac. And I always say, it's I'm a big coffee drinker, and so double macchiatos are my go-to.
Double Ractigino.
Double Ractigino, exactly. If I could spell Ractigino, that's what I would have gone for.
I love it. All right, I think we're ready to jump into our level 1 diagnostic.
Diagnostic cycle will be complete in 20 seconds.
All right, so for this week's diagnostic cycle, this will be a quick one. I just wanted to quickly go through, talk about Captain Benjamin Lafayette Sisko, and just get a quick take from Rick and Carlos on how they look at Sisko inside the overall pantheon of Trek. So Rick, I set you up on this. I want to ask you to pick one word to describe Ben Sisko and explain briefly why you chose that word. What's that word?
That word I chose is inspiring.
Oh, I love that.
This was a nightmare one word for Sisko, but I ended up going with it because he's like, there's just so much to him that is inspiring. He's gone into this. He's a career Starfleet officer. He's a captain, decorated soldier. He's a single father managing this career. He's an emissary. He inspires an entire planet and their whole faith. You can just look at him and think inspiring.
And he inspires literally everybody he comes into touch with. His crew, the Bajorans, Gul Dukat is jealous of him.
Oh, very inspired.
I love it. How about you, Carlos? What's your one word to describe Sisko?
My one word is layered. And the reason I picked that is because I'd go to the mattresses on this with anybody. I actually think that he's probably the only captain that is really defined by something other than being the captain, right? So, like, you have Picard, who I love. You have Kirk, you have Janeway, and I have a deep love for almost every single one of our captains. Lorca is we'll see about that, but we know what a lot of the other captains like, whether it's coffee or archaeology or Shakespeare, whatever it is, collecting antiques. But I don't necessarily think that we really get to know many of the other captains beyond that necessarily. And I actually think that Sisko is the reason I chose layered is because I think that him being captain is only one element of him that the series does a really, really good job of exploring, So I think that he's captain, but he's also the emissary. He's also a father. And I'll talk about this later on, but actually I chose my 5 TrekRanks picks for this show are picked on a different aspect of what I think of kind of that layer of those layers, a different aspect of who Benjamin Sisko is.
Yeah, so I think of it, when I hear that word, I think complex.
Yeah, exactly.
It's definitely complex. All right, so my one, and we'll hear about that in our Prime Directive coming up. So my one word to describe Ben Sisko is intense.
Yep.
And I don't think I need to go into any more details of why I picked that word. I mean, from start to finish through every episode, there's one thing that Ben Sisko was. He was always intense, always on the edge, and always really ready just to commit to whatever challenge or the enemy or even friend was in front of him. So I love that about him. All right, so I wasn't going to ask you this, guys. He's my number 3 captain. I've got him behind Picard and Kirk. Where do you have him, Carlos?
I have him. This is a tough question. It depending on the day. He's either my favorite or my second favorite. I always say the way I always hedge that is that during peacetime, my favorite captain is Picard. During wartime, my favorite captain is Sisko. You need that intensity. So it always goes back between Picard and Sisko.
Yeah, that makes sense. How about you, Rick? Where do you have him?
Again, I mean, much like Carlos, I'm very much Sisko Picard on that thing. I think because I grew up with Next Generation, that's kind of got that place in my heart. But I know that DS9 is maybe the best series, so I think he's my number 1, but it's a very tiny margin over Picard. But yeah, Sisko is number 1.
Yeah.
All right, understood. All right, so let's jump into our Prime Directive.
I do not concur with your captain's decision.
She's following our Prime Directive.
Define Prime Directive.
Okay, so as we get into this, I just want to make sure everyone is clear that when we do any of our top 5 character episodes, it's really more accurately we're looking for our top 5 episodes defined by one moment in that episode. So it kind of gets a little bit wonky, but that would be too unwieldy of a title to use, defined by one moment in that episode. So it's just important to remember that. I think so. Any one of us, or for those of you playing along at home, you might pick a huge, big Sisko episode that's your favorite, and then you might pick a moment to describe that episode, and it might be in a smaller episode that someone might not necessarily think of as a Sisko episode. So, all right. With that in mind, Rick and Carlos, I'm curious about how you guys approach this topic. So what were the specific criteria you used to narrow down your list? And did you guys find this process easy or hard, Rick?
This was a long one. This took a long time doing. I mean, it's a lot like Carlos was just saying. There's so many aspects to Sisko. So where I started was I just listed all those things that Sisko is. He's a father, he's a career officer, he's a soldier, he's the emissary. I went through all those different facets of him. And then against those, I just sort of picked out all those moments. And so then I had this huge list of different moments, and I just kept whittling away till I got my 5 favorites. But it was definitely moments that defined him in those aspects. And I left out when he was, Sisko that isn't Sisko. So if not counting holograms or prophet visions of Sisko or 1950s sci-fi writers that look like him.
Yes. So no Hippocrates Noah is
no,
sure.
I'm afraid not in my list.
That's a shame.
That's great. All right, Carlos, how about you? How did you break it all down?
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like Rick and I cheated together on this. I did exactly the same thing. I mean, when you first asked me to be on the podcast and you said it was moments, I took that word really literally. So I'm not going to list any big Ben Sisko episodes. So Far Beyond the Stars and In the Pale Moonlight, which that latter is my favorite episode of Trek ever, are not on my list, right? What I did is I picked 5 moments that I think represent, like I said earlier, kind of different elements of the Sisko character. And the 5 that I'll be talking about are kind of in no particular order, kind of the Sisko the emissary, Sisko the captain, Sisko the father, Sisko the general, and Sisko the friend. So I really picked moments that I thought those to me are the 5 top Sisko characteristics, and so I picked moments that were really representative of that element of who he is.
Oh, I cannot wait to hear this. So I'm kind of right in the middle. So as I often do, I immediately knew what my number one.
Rick and I didn't call you.
So this is going to be good. So I knew my number one pick. And then the rest of the list, man, it took a lot of brainstorming. It's such a long list of moments and episodes, and it was really hard for me to decide between, am I going to list just a big Sisko episode, or is it going to be a mix of episodes and moments? And I found like I was kind of right in between. So, and you actually already mentioned it. This might be a bit of a spoiler, but there's one huge episode that I struggled with including, because I was kind of surprised that there wasn't like one particular moment that was making me have to pick it. So we'll find out if I did or not. So I'll just leave that there, and we'll see if it made my list. All right. Any other thoughts, you guys? Are we ready to jump in?
No, I wanted to say something. I was debating whether or not to actually say this, but when you used the word intensity, Rick, it really brought me back, and I did a bunch of research for this, and it reminded me I had this like ridiculous run-in once with Avery Brooks, right? Completely not related to Star Trek, and I want, because obviously we're talking about Ben Sisko, and I think you can't talk about Ben Sisko and completely divorce Avery Brooks from this. And I thought I'd share it just because it's a really fun story. I used to work at the New York Public Library. I started my career as a junior fundraising officer there, and they were doing this tiny little event for like 15 to 20 people, readings from sci-fi, and so I volunteered to kind of help people. I had no idea who was doing it. It was just like an after work thing. And they used to give you, for every hour you volunteered, they'd give you half an hour or an hour of holiday. So if you volunteered enough time, you would get extra days for your vacation. So I volunteered, and the person emceeing it and doing half of the readings was Avery Brooks, right? And I mean, I was like 22, and obviously, I've been a diehard fan since the day it came out. And he came in. Nobody really knew who he was. And I just went up to him and I told him that I was a huge fan. And he was so intense. He sat me down, right? And he wanted to know about what I loved about Deep Space Nine, what it was. And I was sweating. I was he interviewed me, right? And he wanted to know. And then at the end of it, he goes, "You get the professional photographer, and you and me are going to take a picture." And I was like, "Oh, okay." So I have this totally random picture with Avery Brooks at the library, us sitting down at this chair. I mean, I don't even know where it is anymore. On these chairs on one side of the library. And it was his intensity, that he was just such an intense person. And I think we so much of him is Sisko. And so I just wanted to share that. The word intensity is something that I had written down in my notes, and it always reminds me of this one little anecdote of this random run-in with Avery Brooks, where he interviewed me for 10 minutes about why it was I liked the show.
That's awesome.
Excellent.
It's not surprising that Avery Brooks is as intense as Ben Sisko. All right, so let's. This is gonna be a cool episode, and we may even have some duplicates. Who knows? Ooh. And if we do, listen for this sound, which could not be more appropriate: the defiant torpedoes on an episode all about Ben Sisko. Third Automaticon, it's time for you to explain the order of things.
I am a Jem'Hadar. He is a Vorta. It is the order of things.
Another clip from Deep Space Nine. We love it. So first up, each of us will reveal our 5-word summary and a hashtag, our TrekRanks staple, to tease our pick. Then we'll reveal our episode title and the specific moment we're picking from that episode, and we'll talk about that thoroughly. At the end, we'll ask for a few secondary system selections for the picks that just missed our lists. And before we start, just want to say that I think more than any other episode we've ever done, I'm convinced that there are 100 good moments that I haven't even considered as we get started. So I can't wait to hear your guys' picks. And I know that if we did this episode again in a month, I'll probably have 20 new ideas that don't even get talked about. So, Rick, let's start with you. What's your number 5 pick for a Ben Sisko episode?
Right, my number 5. And 5 words are: speech tells problems with paradise. Hashtag the problem is Earth. It is the Marquee Part 2.
All right.
One of the things I was looking at was how Sisko goes from not wanting to be on this assignment to eventually buying a house on Bajor. And as I was picking out all these moments to show this development as he sort of becomes more at home on Bajor, one of the first bits that picked out is where he starts to put himself aside from Earth and more into his local area, into Bajor and the surrounding areas. So this speech where he really sort of goes into, he'll have this objective look at Earth and the Federation and their paradise and how that doesn't apply to everywhere else. That doesn't translate to the places where the problems haven't been solved yet. And also it's just epic speechifying, where you see Avery Brooks just gets completely into it, and Sisko's really going for this epic speech. And as he finishes, he sort of then the expression on his face is he catches himself. He looks at Kira, who's smiling, and it's just oh, I just totally went off on one there, didn't I? And Kira's like, yeah, Leggett Parnty, you should give him that speech. And I just loved the whole moment because it's a beautiful, epic speech. And then afterwards, you realise just how passionate he'd got about it, almost like he didn't mean to. But it all came out then. It was an epic moment.
Are you questioning Federation policy, Commander?
All I know is that the situation in the demilitarized zone is deteriorating rapidly.
Personally, I think you're overstating the problem. Establish a dialogue with the Maquis. They're still Federation citizens. I'm sure they'll listen to reason. Good luck, Commander.
Establish a dialogue? What the hell does she think I've been trying to do?
Commander.
Just because a group of people belong to the Federation, it does not mean that they are saints.
Excuse me.
Do you know what the trouble is?
No.
The trouble is Earth.
Really?
On Earth, there is no poverty, no crime, no war. You look out the window of Starfleet headquarters and you see paradise. Well, it's easy to be a saint in paradise, but the Maquis do not live in paradise. Out there, in the demilitarized zone, all the problems haven't been solved yet. Out there are no saints, just people. Angry, scared, determined people who are going to do whatever it takes to survive, whether it meets with the Federation approval or not.
Makes sense to me.
I'm glad someone understands.
Legate Parn's ship just put in at Docking Bay 5. Maybe you'd like to give the same speech to him.
I just might do that.
I love that moment. I actually think these are two underrated episodes.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I love this pick, and I'm not going to say any more right now.
Love this moment. Okay, all right. Let's just keep it rolling because we know we got a lot to get into here. So, what's your number 5 pick, Carlos?
Well, so this is the moment that I think represents Sisko, the captain, for me. And the 5 words are: on Earth there is no hashtag just a man and his will to survive. And it's it's season 2, episode 21, a la Alex Perry. I love how Alex always, every time he's on the show, says the season and the episode, so I'm going to start doing that. And it's also the Maquis part 2. It is like we cheated, Rich.
Oh, man.
Are you kidding me?
No. It is that exact same speech from the Maquis part 2.
It's the same scene?
It's the same
That is impossible.
No.
TrekRanks is the best.
Yeah.
This is amazing.
Uh-huh.
So that's the way, I'm not usually quiet. That's the reason I didn't want to say anything, because it's literally my number 5 pick. I can show you the notes later on.
Let me just say this, Carlos. When you were quiet, I was like, wow, he wouldn't even be quiet if he had the same pick in like the second round, because he wouldn't be able to hold on to his tongue. So I must have known it was the next pick. That's the only thing that was
yeah.
So all right. So why did you pick it? That's incredible. I mean, it's such a great moment.
Rick, for all the reasons Rick said, I think that this is, to me, he's really come on. It's a scene where he's this captain he's embraced the fact that he's the captain at the edge of the frontier, right? And I also think that this is an amazing scene because Picard, Kirk, Janeway, Archer, no other captain would say those words.
No.
None, right? And I think that it highlights the difference between TNG and DS9. I love the fact that it's complete. He's just so frustrated at Starfleet and Nechayev, who's just walked out of his office. And Kira comes in, as Rick said. She's about to say something, and Sisko just monologues. He just goes for it, and Kira's just standing there like a deer in a headlights, doesn't know what to say. and it's true, it's easy to be a saint in paradise. It's so easy to be a saint when you're on a starship, or when you live on Earth, or when you live on Vulcan or Betazoid. But out there, where they are at the edge of the frontier, everything's a shade of gray, and everything is infinitely more complicated. And I think it shows that what he's up against, and it also kind of highlights the difference between DS9 as a series and and every other incarnation of Trek that came either before or after. So to me, that is like the definitive. I am the captain, and what I am captaining, what I need to deal with is this particularly difficult shade of gray situation.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I forgot to do this because I was so shocked. Duplicate. Incredible. Yeah. All right, Rick, any other thoughts? I mean, it's such an indelible moment, and it is a bit of a game-changing moment.
It is. I mean,
in Trek storytelling.
It sets the tone for Deep Space Nine from then on, that we're not just going to be Star Trek. We're going to get under the skin of Star Trek and really see what makes it tick and get see how this actually works when you start pulling it apart a little bit. And it goes so well from there.
It's also the people, right, on the show. The characters on the show, none of them are saints, including Sisko, right? And you could argue, all the other shows, most of them were pretty saint-like, especially on TNG. And I think that his thing about, it's easy to be a saint in paradise has always just stuck with me.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's great. All right, amazing start. So let me jump into my number 5 pick, which is also from season 2, episode 2. And yes, Alex does that. I've started doing that as well.
Yeah.
So, the season and episode. It is all right. My 5 words in a hashtag is a favor and delayed evacuation. Hashtag Sisko thinks of everything. It's The Circle again, season 2, episode 2. First of all, the scene is Sisko's DS9 evacuation, and I love the Circle trilogy. It's got so much great world building and Bajoran political intrigue. So I love that, but I am starting off with a little bit of a cheat. So my first Sisko moment from this episode is where he goes to Bajor and he goes to visit the colonel who's kind of leading the military of the provisional government, and he tells him about the Kasari and the fact that Cardassia is funneling weapons through them for the Circle. And he asks the colonel about trying to get Kira reassigned to DS9, and the colonel says, "You told me about the weapons first, then asked about Kira. You could have traded that information for a favor." And I just love when Sisko says, "Oh, I wouldn't do that." I just love that line, that mischievous delivery, like he's a little bit playing the "I know that you know that I know" game right there, so that he'll get a little bit of a favor down the road. And I love that moment. But my main moment at the end of this episode is when it's the first inkling of how Sisko's willing to bend the rules and not just blindly follow orders. And it's right at the end when he's telling everybody to evacuate, and he's basically saying, he asked the chief how long it would really take us to evacuate, taking all the Starfleet equipment, everything. And chief says, "Oh, that would take a week." He's like, "Really? Then I guess some of us won't quite be done by the time they get here." And I just love that moment.
Yeah.
It sets up the way Sisko's thinking. He's always thinking ahead. So for me, he's just he can be really calculating in that way. So and what he's willing to do. So great moment. Love that episode, and I just love those little bit of a cheat, those 2 moments from Sisko in The Circle.
Yeah, I mean, I'll talk about this later on as well, and I'm sure Rick, you will too, given that we've obviously
we've synced our lists.
He's very calculating, but he's also a risk taker, right? He always takes calculated risks, always, and that's kind of his MO as a general, as a soldier, and I love that about him.
Well said. Yeah. Rick, any quick thoughts?
No, I love the choice. It's one of those things where Sisko is kind of he's very good at reading people and getting like the gist of what will work best for them. Like in the case of he knows this guy will respect him, not asking for the favor outright. So it's almost like he's played him in a way, but by not trying to play him for that favor.
Exactly. Exactly. The old "I know that you know that I know" game.
Yeah.
And I love the way it ends when the colonel just when he knows he's won, because the colonel says, "I will remember that about you."
Yeah.
And of course, it pays off in part 3 of that. So, all right, let's move on to round 4. Rick, what is your number 4 Ben Sisko
Number
episode?
4, right. My 5 words are "dress down just for show" and hashtag "your wife won't have to complain anymore." I've chosen Captive Pursuit, specifically the moment near the end where Sisko chews out O'Brien for freeing Tosk and helping him escape.
Yes.
And he's totally laying into him. He's giving him the full Starfleet dressing down. All through that episode, he's kind of stuck to the letter of the Prime Directive, said, it's not a great situation, nothing we can do. And then he's chewing this guy out and saying, if anything like that, and you'll be off the station, your wife won't have to complain about the conditions here. And then O'Brien's just like, but I thought you and the constable would have caught us. And it's like, I guess we missed that one. And it's one of those. It's almost one of his earliest bending the rules thing. It's like he's willing to let O'Brien do it, and he'll just give him that leeway. And it just shows. I think that's pointed up very early on that this is a different sort of station. This is a different sort of Starfleet than we're used to. This Sisko's going to play it by his own rules a little bit, and. So I think that was maybe the earliest point for me where I realised Sisko is a very different kind of captain.
This was definitely on my long list because of that exact. I think it's literally the first time where you can see him cheating the rules a little bit, because it's the scene where Miles literally says that you could have caught me behind some security force fields. I figured you would just lock us in somewhere. And he literally says, "Guess that one got by us," and just out of here. That was so well done. Carlos, what do you think?
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think that he's, because of the nature of the situation, he's very hands off with a lot of the crew, right? Like he lets his people be themselves and do what they think is best, right? And I think in Deep Space Nine, you find yourselves in situations, unlike other shows, where a lot of it is kind of driven by one character as opposed to like a small group of characters. So you have a lot of shows where like one character is taking this initiative, and I think that's a fantastic example of that. Especially, I love O'Brien, and I think that his Sisko still finding his feet of saying, this is still a Starfleet station, but it isn't. And I think it's that first kind of twinkle of like acknowledging that, which I think is wonderful.
And superb hashtag with your wife won't have to complain about being on the station anymore. It's so great. That's a great way to deliver that. All right, Carlos, what's your number 4 pick?
So my number 5 was Sisko the Captain. So this one is Sisko the Friend. My 5 words are a friend quite like you. My hashtag is I'll be there for you. And my episode is Season 4, Episode 5, Rejoined. Specifically the scene where Dax is about halfway through the episode, and it's a pretty long scene. It's like 4 minutes or 5 minutes because I just rewatched it. And it's just a chat between Dax and Sisko, where they do their Dax Sisko thing, where there's a problem, and they each kind of and they talk it out, and they just they take both sides of the issue and they discuss it and they arrive at a conclusion. And that happens. I really wanted to include a moment between Dax and Sisko, and I thought about In Purgatory's Shadow, You're Cordially Invited, Blood Oath. There's all of these amazing episodes where they have this discussion, obviously in the Pale Moonlight. But I really like this one because it Sisko at the end basically, he says to Dax, very similar, kind of echoes of what Rick just said. He says to Dax, "Do not do this. This is taboo. You cannot have a relationship. You can't continue this relationship. It's against true law. You'll be exiled. The Dax symbiote will die with Jadzia." And he gives that whole speech and says Curzon wouldn't do it. And at the end, he just basically says, "But if you, Jadzia, decide to do it, I'll back you all the way." And it's just like he's just there for his people, but particularly for Jadzia. And I think the fact that you had this entire 7-year kind of multi-generational, or I guess the only way to put it, friendship between Sisko and then Curzon, and then Jadzia and then Ezri. And there was no sexual tension. It was never romantic. It was just no big deal. It's just wonderful. And you don't really see that in TV, right? And it's also not a necessarily paternal relationship. It's very much a relationship of equals. And when it's always Dax and Jadzia together, there is no rank necessarily, and it's wonderful to see. And I've always loved. That's one of my favorite friendships in all of Trek.
Yeah, that's an awesome pick. The one thing I found when I was researching these lists was, I think I always have known it was there, but the Dax Sisko relationships were just in almost they were all over the place on my list.
Yeah.
And we will talk about them again because they're definitely on my list. But this one is, like you said, just the friendship, the support. It's Avery Brooks is so good in that scene. It's awesome. How about you, Rick? What's your take?
I love that. The Dax-Sisko relationship is fantastic through the whole way. And like I say, when you look back, you realize how many times it crops up. And I really like that sort of juxtaposition that they come in and that Sisko had Dax as his mentor. And now he's got this much younger person, but it's still Dax. And just every time she has some crazy notion or adventure, he's then the voice of reason, but he's always there for her. And it's a really great relationship. It's fantastic. And Rejoined is one of my all-time favorite episodes of DS9. It's fantastic.
That is an awesome deep cut pick, Carlos. Good job. So, all right, I'll change gears a little bit with mine. It's definitely a bit of an outlier pick, but all right, my 5 words in a hashtag is Sisko goes in the box. Hashtag Doctrine sucks. And it's season 2, episode 15. It's Paradise, which is an episode I love. And the scene, as I said in my 5 words, is Sisko goes in the hot box. So I just love the way this shows the toughness and the stubbornness and the will of Ben Sisko. He's such a proud, stubborn guy. So I mean, it's not much to say. It's this. Obviously, it's the episode where him and O'Brien are stuck on the planet with the crazy cult leader, and she's basically saying, "Get rid of your uniform, join us. I'll give you some water. You can stay out of the box. Show the others that you're one of us." And instead, he just silently gets up, walks outside, stumbles toward the box, and puts himself back inside the hot box to just basically show everybody resist. And I love that moment because I've said on this podcast many times, doctrine sucks. It's the worst. Everyone's just some staid old cult trying to tell you how to live morally. So there's nothing worse than that. And I love Ben Sisko in this moment. So what do you guys think of that?
I love that one. It's a fantastic episode. And just Sisko's sheer defiance there, that as you say, the moment where he just turns back around and goes straight back in that box. It's just like, I'm not having any of this. I'll go back in the box.
Yeah, it goes back to that intensity, right? That Sisko, like I will make the situation that I want it to be, and I will take command of it, even if I have to suffer. Is just it's amazing.
It's almost like the being in that hot box is so intense, but I'm Sisko. I'm so much more intense. I'm going back how intense that box.
Yeah, the box is inside. Yeah, exactly. The box is inside me, right?
I love that he walks back silently, but I would have also loved that if he had just said, "I'm not having any of this," and just got in, as Rick just said. All right, let's move on to the soup round. Round 3. Rick, what's your number 3 pick?
All right, I think you're definitely going to love this one, Jim. 5 words: self-sacrifice to save the future, and hashtag the name is Bell.
Oh yes,
yes.
It's just the moment as he steps forward at the end of past tense part 1 and says the name is Bell. Because that whole first part of that episode, Sisko's very calm. He's just figuring out what's going on, where they are, when they are, how to quietly survive in these events, stay out of the way. And things go wrong. Sisko and Bashir are right in the thick of events, and suddenly the Gabriel Bell, the big player in the Bell Riots, is dead. And he just steps forward and announces the name's Bell. And it's amazing because we know now how much is at stake. Sisko has to get this right to restore history, to restore the future. And if he does, Gabriel Bell is fated to die, which means he's stepped forward to sacrifice himself to restore everything. Yep. And he just does that with all the gravitas and presence and intensity that Sisko has. It's this incredible moment. It's just such chills, and it's just perfect.
That's enough!
Well, look who we've got here. Way to show initiative, new boy. Take him and throw him back there along with the rest of our guests.
What the hell do you think you're doing?
I think I am making a political statement. Maybe if we're lucky, I might even be able to stage a nice little photo op. I hope that meets with your approval.
Do as he says.
Well, all right. I've waited a long time for this. And I know I won't be disappointed. Ain't that right, new boy?
The name is Bell. Gabriel Bell.
And those episodes, so good.
It's one of the great scenes in the history of Star Trek.
Yes.
It's absolutely amazing. Spoiler alert, I saw my secondary systems. I didn't pick it only because we've talked about it many times on the show, but it is just absolutely one of the best, most dramatic moments in Trek. For them to just go out on the episode on that and everyone knowing what it meant. I love those episodes. Love that moment.
Yeah.
How about you, Carlos?
No, I mean, I think I didn't pick those episodes. But I think, it was hard not to at one point, just because, like,
Right.
I mean, those episodes are so quintessentially Star Trek.
Yeah.
Like, everything that Star Trek is about is in those episodes. But I think what's amazing about those episodes, it's that, when those episodes aired in 93 or 94, whenever it was, or 95, like 2022, whatever year it is that they go to, seemed so far away. And the riots and all of that, and the lack of social mobility, and just seemed so kind of foreign. And look where we are in 2018, so close to that. And I think those episodes are just they ring a little too close to home. I don't know. Did you guys see the article that was in the Atlantic maybe last month about those two episodes?
No.
Oh yeah,
No,
I'll put it out on Twitter so everybody who listens to it, you should definitely read it. It's an academic who's a big Star Trek fan who writes about these episodes, and it was an article in the Atlantic. It was I was just surprised to come across it as you guys are now,
Right.
and it's amazing, like absolutely amazing, and it's I'll put it out on Twitter.
It's sad how prescient those episodes are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really sad.
Yeah.
All right. Carlos, what's your number 3 pick?
So we've done the general and the father. The general, the captain, and
the friend.
And the friend. And now we're going to do the emissary. So Sisko the emissary. My 5 words are: a penance must be exacted. And my hashtag are: do you think you're what they say you are? It's season 6, episode 6, Sacrifice of Angels. And the scene is when they're in the wormhole and the Dominion fleet is coming to basically destroy DS9 and have their way with the Gamma Quadrant. And Sisko basically begs. He goes in and tells the prophets, "Help me. I'm alone. This can't happen. You need to intervene." And they agree to help him for a price. And I think that I was originally going to pick Rapture because I feel that Rapture is very much the come to Jesus moment for Sisko. But I think that this episode and that moment, that scene in particular, for him as the emissary, I think that everything is his role as the emissary is everything is before that moment and then after that moment. Because in that moment, it's the foreshadowing, right? It's where they say, you're going to suffer, and your destiny is not what it is, what you want it to be. And I just it's just an amazing moment, and he accepts because it's for the greater good. It's what you do as the captain of the people, as the emissary of the prophets. That's what you do. That's the sacrifice that comes with the job. And he does it, and it to me is just an amazing moment. Plus, I also don't think that there are many episodes where a captain pleads for something, like begs for something, and that's what he does. And I think it's phenomenal.
Yeah, Rapture was on my my secondary systems. Not Sacrifice of Angels. That's a great moment. I've forgotten that's really the beginning of the whole payback that's coming in these last 2 seasons.
Exactly.
Is that moment, and that is just such an epic episode across the board for Sisko as well. Rick, what's your take?
What they did beautifully in that episode, particularly in that moment, was they'd had such an epic build-up in that episode. It had been everything had been moving at such a pace, and the stakes were getting higher and higher, and that situation was getting more and more desperate. And then at the point they played the card that could have been the biggest cop-out, that he went and got the magical wormhole aliens to solve the problem. But the way the moment played sold it beautifully. And I think particularly that the penance will be exacted meant that this wasn't a cop-out. This was him. He turned to his gods and he said, "Be gods and save this." And they had answered him. But if this was not over and there's going to be more to this. So it was I think it was always a very delicate line they did that, but they got it perfectly right. So they went, what could have been a very big disappointment came off as a brilliant moment and just worked, as I said, set the tone for the rest of the series from then on.
Yeah.
Everything they did with Sisko as the emissary was a delicate line absolutely worked on every level. And that's coming from someone like me who doesn't necessarily like those types of storylines. But I love that storyline. I love that part of Deep Space Nine.
I just don't. You don't, because of his intensity and who he is. You never think of Sisko as actually that. Again, I think that moment where he just says he pleads with the gods, and it's so almost the antithesis of Trek, the antithesis of being a captain on Star Trek. And it's so anti-Sisko, yet he has no other choice, and he does it, and it's just it's phenomenal.
Love it. That's a cool.
And
pick.
I love the fact that it's Jake, the wormhole. It's like the wormhole alien that is the one that says to him, "A penance must be exacted." That can't have been by coincidence. Like they said, which of them has to be? It has to be his son. Has to say that to him.
Yeah, of course. All right, so let's finish off the soup round. My number 3 pick, my 5 words and a hashtag is, I need proof of Dominion duplicity. Hashtag not more words, proof. And I'm going with a big dog here. It's In the Pale Moonlight, Season 6, Episode 19. It's my number 1 all-time DS9 episode at TrekRanks. And my scene that I'm picking is when Sisko and Dax are running through the point counterpoint. I'm trying to convince the Romulans to enter the war.
It's in their own best interest to join the war. That's the key. That's the reason the Romulans will finally take action. Not to do us any favors, but to protect themselves from the Dominion.
Okay. Let's say I'm the Romulan Proconsul. From where I'm sitting, the Dominion isn't a threat to me. I have a non-aggression pact with them. They are my allies.
You're not going to put your faith in some piece of paper, are you?
Not at all. I've been watching them very closely since the beginning of the war, and so far, they've kept their part of the bargain.
They're violating your territory almost every day. What kind of an ally is that?
So they're crossing my backyard to give the Federation a bloody nose. I can't say that makes me feel very sad.
You can't be naive enough to think that the Dominion is going to stop with the Federation. When they're finished with us, they're coming after you.
That's speculation.
The Founders see it as their sacred duty to bring order to the galaxy. Their order. Do you think they'll sit idly by while you keep your chaotic empire right next to their perfect order? No. If you watch us go under, then what you're really doing is signing your own death warrant.
But before I plunge my people into a conflict that will kill millions of loyal Romulan citizens, I need something more concrete than the self-serving argument of a Starfleet officer. I need proof of Dominion duplicity. Not more words. Proof.
Very good, old man. You would have made a decent Romulan.
Such good writing. And I tease this a little bit in the order of things, that I was tempted to not pick this episode, but at the end I just couldn't leave it off. So for me, in some ways, this is a little bit more of a Garrick episode than Sisko. It's obviously all-time great Trek, and Sisko's a big part of it, but he's a little bit there for the ride that Garrick's taking him on. So, but this scene, it's incredible. Sisko and Dax together is, for me, we talked about it briefly, it's one of the most underrated things in DS9. They have so many great scenes together, and this one's just so dynamic. So I also considered the scene where he says, "I can live with it," and anytime punching Garrick in the face, which was a pretty great moment as well. So we've got In the Pale Moonlight on the board. Rick, what do you think?
I mean, I knew it was going to come up. It's a fantastic episode. And I think on my list, it made about 7 or 8 moments through my big list. I won't say if any of them get through, but there's just so many moments for Sisko in this. From all the way through the whole setup with him talking to the camera, all the stuff. I just can't even focus enough on one particularly great thing about it, because everything is so good about that episode.
Yeah, is that the only episode where someone addresses the camera directly?
Well, in this one it's an actual camera, because not camera, but it's it's the log.
Yeah.
But there is
rules of engagement.
Yes, rules of engagement. Thank you.
I guess
Thank
that's
you.
true. Yeah.
That one had a unique fourth wall storytelling mechanism. That was
They repeat it a little bit in Dr. Bashir, I presume, with the interviews that Zimmerman does. Don't they?
Oh, yeah.
Some of those are addressed to camera.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
And also in Inquisition in the first Section 31 episode.
But the way they do it, because in all of those, it's one character talking to another character, essentially.
Correct. This one, he's actually
like
recording himself.
He's recording himself, but basically, what's amazing about that episode is that he's really talking to you, the audience, saying, "I'm about to do something that goes against my training. I'm about to do something that no, citizen of the Federation, no Starfleet captain should ever do, but it's for the greater good, and I have to tell you the reasons why." It's the best. It's the
legendary.
best.
Legendary.
Yeah. That's why you want Sisko to be your captain during wartime.
All right, let's move on to round 2. Rick, what is your number 2 pick?
Right, 5 words. Trapped with Hitler, in control. Hashtag, and that is why you're not an evil man.
Oh, man.
Yes.
At the height of his confrontation with Gul Dukat in Waltz, it's just that whole time, despite the fact Sisko's injured and Dukat's not, it seems like Dukat is the crazy man who's completely got Sisko at his mercy, but Sisko's in control. He's goading Dukat. He's sussed the transmitters at working. He knows that Dukat wants his respect, and he knows it's easy to get Dukat to go into this rant, to just really confess all his true feelings about what he should have done to Bajorans. And he knows Dukat's so in love with his own voice that he'll distract himself, and Sisko can then just swing at him and knock him out. And I just think that Sisko's managed that situation so beautifully in the way he's done it, and it's also obviously then completely reset the relationship a little bit with Sisko and Dukat's now de facto evil from there.
Yeah.
Yes.
So,
there's no coming back for Dukat.
No, not from the things you say.
I love this pick, mainly, full disclosure, because I didn't think of this episode. I don't know how I missed this. This is such an amazing Sisko episode because he's controlling him so well. He's so far ahead of him in terms of pandering to him to get what he needs and bury Dukat deeper. Yeah. I love that. Carlos, what's your take?
I mean, this episode is everything, right? Like, I think Rick, you said it. Like, I think this was the point of no return. This is when Dukat changed from 6 seasons of being that like cruel military man, whether he was fighting his own private little war or working for the Cardassian government central command. But this is when he went like truly nuts and started, the whole Pa Wraith's converted man storyline that Dukat ends the series on comes from this, right? So again, to me, it's one of those moments of like Dukat before Waltz and Dukat after Waltz, right? Two completely different beasts. And I think this is an amazing episode. I love the fact that the other, like his almost like his Battlestar moments of like the people who he imagines are Kira and Weyoun, right? Like his tormentors, the other people that he so wants them to, he so wants their respect and their allegiance. And it's Sisko. It's always Sisko, Kira, and Weyoun. And the fact that they're his like his torturers. It's just such a great episode.
Yeah. Dukat be crazy.
Oh, yes.
Dukat be crazy.
No doubt. All right, Carlos, what's your number 2 pick?
So now we're on to Sisko the General for me.
Okay.
So the 5 words are, we are about to find out. The hashtag, keeping in the theme of song lyrics, and we were just talking about Hamilton. So the hashtag is Here Comes the General, and it's season 6, episode 5, Favor the Bold. Yes. And the moment is that little speech that he gives at the very end to the crew, just the very last 20 seconds of that episode, where he basically says that there's an old saying. Fortune favors the bold, and we're about to find out.
To all ships, this is Captain Sisko. Assume attack formation Delta 2. There's an old saying, fortune favors the bold. Well, I guess we're about to find out.
That moment is, to me, very representative of Sisko, the general, the tactician. He he analyzes the situation. He looks at what the risks are, but he just goes for it. There's always an element of failure in his strategy, but he knows that fortune does favor the bold, and if you're bold enough, you only need it one time, but it's that one time that can make all the difference, and he just goes for it. And I just think that moment, it again represents who he is as that soldier. And if you look at his military career, aside from being captain, he was chosen to plan the invasion of Cardassia. He's that military strategist that Admiral Ross appoints. Like, he's just this brilliant mind, but it's not it's very kind of, he just goes for it. He just swings for the fences, and I think that to me is the moment where it's most where it's heightened the most.
Excellent baseball metaphor to describe Sisko. Swing for the fences.
Oh, I didn't even catch that.
I love that your last two episodes are Favor the Bold and Sacrifice of Angels, which are Trek does not get any better than that back to back episodes. No. Incredible. Rick, what's your quick take?
I love that. I mean, it goes with my my one word description of Sisko, inspiring, because even though he's giving no guarantees, it's just very short, very brief. There's an old saying, fortune favours the bold. I'd follow him straight in that battle. Straight.
Oh, totally.
Completely.
Yep.
I'd be jumping in. So it's fantastic, mate. It just is one of those things that just encapsulates Sisko as the general, like you say, as the general, the guy who's leading the charge. It's really well done.
He even gets Garrick to follow him into battle.
Well said. Yeah, when he gets Garrick to murder for him too.
Well, exactly, man.
All right. Okay, my number 2 pick is that's another big episode. 5 words in a hashtag are I need to become the villain. Hashtag you betrayed your uniform, and it is For the Uniform, season 5, episode 13. My number 4 at TrekRanks. These are all really high for me on my TrekRanks list. And the scene is when Sisko fires on that Maquis colony. This one says it all, right? It's like we've seen lots of moments in Sisko's arcs that showed what he's capable of going to the edge and maybe even a little bit over it. But on this occasion, he goes right off the cliff, and I think that this might be even more questionable than being complicit in the murder of that Romulan that he had Garrick offed. Yeah. So this might actually be worse. I mean, he fired torpedoes on a planet to make it inhabitable for the residents. So it's brutal. Oh, and then I like at the very end of this episode when it's another one where he's rule breaking. When this episode ends with Dax saying, "Did you check with Starfleet on that plan?" And he just says, "Oh, I knew I forgot something."
Yeah.
I mean, this is Sisko. So I was also very close to picking the "he beat me" scene, which is also epic. I love this episode. So, Rick, what's your take on it?
Oh, yeah, this is one of my all-time favorites. I've got this very distinct memory when I first saw it. I was with a group of friends and we watched that, and afterwards I was just like, "Oh my God, he's just fired on another planet, made it on. He's just totally gone over the line." And everyone else is kind of shrugging it off, and I'm just like, "Did you not even see that?" And I never really understood why they didn't see it as a big issue. But I remember for every time it just blew me away, and all the times I've watched it, that him and Eddington through that whole episode is amazing.
Incredible, absolutely incredible.
It's almost like I love. So I actually hate the episode where Q-less or whatever it is on that first season of Deep Space Nine. I think that episode is terrible, but it's almost like it should be like the official Star Trek Deep Space Nine drinking game, right? Like every time Morn is on the screen, and every single time you could point to the screen and say, Picard wouldn't do that, right? And it's just like, I'm not Picard. And he's like, yep. And that's one of those moments where you're just like, yeah, Picard wouldn't do that. And that intensity of like, going after, you have that goal and you're there to win, win the war, whatever it takes. And I just think that Sisko is, that episode is amazing. And the whole Eddington Sisko cat and mouse little trilogy is fantastic. Yes. Trek.
Yeah, it's those 3 episodes are 3 of my all-time favorites. And there's a moment in this, when Eddington's riling him up with the with the Les Miserables stuff.
Yeah.
And then they come back to Sisko in the mess hall, and he's reading Les Miserables.
Yeah.
He's like wants to figure out because anything keeps getting the best of him. So Sisko, he'll do whatever it takes, even read Les Miserables at the goading of his arch nemesis.
That episode is the only reason I ever looked at Les Miserables.
Yeah, me too. So
whatever, you guys are missing out. Les Mis is awesome. Okay,
I know, it's fantastic.
You guys are missing out.
I Blaze of Glory got me into Lucky Loonies too. That didn't happen. All right. Okay. Deep cut.
Right.
Round 1, top 5 Ben Sisko episodes. Rick, what's your top pick?
Right, my number 1. It's a little bit familiar. 5 words. Time to be the villain. #, you betrayed your uniform.
Yes. It's a little too. Hold on. Here we go. Sisko firing defiant torpedoes. I love it.
Yeah, it's just such a fantastic sequence. The whole communicator, I think, in that episode was a godsend because it got them to be face to face. It's so much better than it would have been on a view screen. So for that last conversation where Eddington's, can't you see what's happening to you? You're going against everything you claim to believe in, and he's just like, you betrayed your uniform. And everything about that moment is great because he's just so playing the villain in that he's pulling all his Sisko intensity into it.
The Maquis are scrambling their transport ships. They're starting to evacuate.
Do you realize what you've done?
I've only just begun. I'm going to eliminate every Maquis colony in the DMZ.
You're talking about turning hundreds of thousands of people into homeless refugees.
That's right. When you attacked the Malinche, you proved one thing. That the Maquis have become an intolerable threat to the security of the Federation, and I am going to eliminate that threat.
But think about those people you saw in the caves. Huddled and starving, they didn't attack the Malinche.
You should have thought about that before you attacked a Federation starship. Helm! Lay in a course for Tracken 2, Warp 6. Commander, prepare 2 more torpedoes.
Engine room, bridge.
Set course 050
Unlock safeties on torpedoes
179.
3 and 4.
Can't you see what's happening to you? You're going against everything you claim to believe in. And for what? To satisfy a personal vendetta?
You betrayed your uniform!
And you're betraying yours, right now! The sad part is you don't even realize it. I feel sorry for you, Captain. This obsession with me. Look what it's cost you.
Major, shut that thing off! Commander Worf, prepare to launch torpedoes!
Wait! If you call off your attack, I'll turn over all our biogenic weapons.
Not enough!
All right, Javert. I'll give you what you want. Me.
Again, it shows that he's willing to go that bit further than any other captain will go. And it does. Yeah. It certainly foreshadows maybe a deeper episode about questionable decisions later on.
The other thing about Sisko on this one is, and maybe on the production value more, is that they show Eddington getting the better of him like 4 straight times. He pulls the wool over his eye. Every time Sisko thinks, okay, I got him now. Nope. So he literally pushed him to the edge, and he went off it.
How scared would you have been if you were like an ensign on the bridge during that conversation? You're like, oh my God, I want to transfer right now.
No, that's right.
Even Worf looked a little bit uncomfortable, I think.
I mean, Worf wants nothing more than fire those torpedoes, and he hesitates. He's like, Mr. Worf, I said fire the torpedoes. So good. Fantastic. All right, Carlos, what is your number 1 pick?
So now we're on to, I think, the ultimate defining characteristic of Sisko, and that's Sisko the father. My 5 words are something my father taught me. # may you build a ladder to the stars. And it's this is deep, boys. Season 5, episode 25, In the Cards.
Oh, love that.
Now, this is the captain's log that Sisko that narrates the last, literally, minute and a half of the episode.
Captain's log, stardate 50929.4. 2 days ago, this station felt like a tomb. I'd never seen so many of my crew depressed at the same time. But for some reason, it now seems as though a new spirit has swept through the station, as if someone had opened a door and let a gust of fresh air blow through a musty old house. Why this is happening, frankly, is a mystery to me. After all, nothing has really changed. The Dominion is still a threat. The Cardassians are still threatening to retake the station, and I can still see the clouds of war gathering on the horizon. So why do I sense a newfound sense of optimism in the air? But maybe I'm overthinking this. Maybe the real explanation is as simple as something my father taught me a long time ago. Even in the darkest moments, you can always find something that'll make you smile.
That captain's log, to me, is completely representative of him as this father figure of, obviously, to Jake, because, the Jake Sisko dynamic is one for the ages. But it also shows him being a father almost to Nog, and also to the rest of the crew, right? So to me, that is the ultimate kind of Sisko as the father figure, and also the fact that he can't be the father without being the son, right? His relationship with his own dad is really important. So what I love about that log and that moment is that Sisko quotes his own father. It shows him being super affectionate, that hug and that kiss that he gives to Jake. And I love the fact how affectionate and touchy-feely he is with his own son. It shows him kind of showing affection to Nog and seeing, because he shakes Nog's hand, and you have Nog has the biggest smile of I have done right, I've done something good for the world type look on his face. But then it also shows all of the kind of, all the other moments of other members of his crew and what it is that they're doing and how they're having a better day, because of the actions of that Jake and that Jog. I guess that's their Jake and Nog's celebrity name that Jog have done throughout the episode. And that, just to me, it's such a little. It is a little throwaway scene. You never think about it. But I think it encapsulates that absolute defining characteristic that no matter what, he was the general, he's the emissary, but he needed to be there until Jake grew up. And his devotion to Jake and to being a father, to me, is the ultimate kind of Sisko characteristic.
Such a great pick. It's such a great episode. So underrated.
Yeah, it's so underrated.
So much fun. And it's like the last little, I consider it part of that season 5, season 6 Dominion War arc. Whenever I watch that all the way through those
totally
6 episodes, I always include this. So.
Well, they signed a non-aggression pact in that episode.
Exactly.
It's like, they're hunting for this baseball card, and the B story is them something that's integral to the entire the war arc. It's amazing.
Yeah. It's really, really well done. That moment is great, and I'm glad Sisko the father got highlighted by a pick. I didn't do it. I was close to something in the Explorers, but in my secondary systems. But it's an awesome pick. Rick, what's your take on it?
I'm really jealous you came in with that perfect father moment, because that was something I was looking really hard to get in, because that's one of the best parts of Sisko to me, is that father relationship he has with Jake, and that's a beautiful moment for it. I was struggling to find anything that really sold it. In my head, I could sort of say, this epitomizes him as the father in this Sisko moment. Everything I kept thinking of was probably more of a Jake moment. I was going through The Visitor a lot and Explorers. Yeah. That's a fantastic moment. And it is that sort of move then. It's the war after that. And this is almost like that last moment of calm and peace and happiness almost on the station before it all sort of really goes to hell after that, doesn't it? So it is a great, fantastic pick.
Yeah, it really does go to hell after that.
And it's amazing to me that we've never gotten another captain that has a kid.
I know.
I mean, Kirk probably had a lot of children, but and he does have David, but he knows David for 2 weeks, right? So I'm saying a real relationship.
Yeah, it is interesting. That's the only one. Well, maybe Lorca does. We don't know. All right. let's close out round one. My number one pick, and I'm happy to reveal this one. So I'll get to that in a second. So my 5 words in a hashtag is "In this place I belong." Hashtag my favorite Trek speech. Episode is Call to Arms, season 5, the season finale of season 5, and it's Sisko's farewell speech to Deep Space Nine. And so this pick for me was more about the moment than the episode for sure. Although I love this episode, it's number 3 at TrekRanks, but it's just for me this is Sisko working on all cylinders. He has a plan and he's leading his staff with absolute perfections. And again, this is one that I knew it was gonna be my number one. I'm not sure why this speech is so impactful for me the first time I saw it, and why it stayed with me so long in such a strong way. But I've always loved it, and let's play it right now.
When I first took command of this post, all I wanted was to be somewhere else, anywhere but here. But now, 5 years later, this has become my home, and you have become my family. And leaving this station, leaving you, is one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. But this war isn't over yet. I want you to know that while we were keeping the Dominion occupied, a Starfleet Klingon task force crossed the border into Cardassia and destroyed the Dominion shipyards on Taurus 3. Your sacrifices, our sacrifices, made that victory possible. But no victory can make this moment any easier for me. And I promise I will not rest until I stand with you again. Here. In this place where I belong. Sisko to Defiant.
Standing by, sir.
1 to beam aboard.
Aye, Captain.
So for anyone that's listened to the show, this maybe solves a little bit of a mystery and answers a question that I get a lot, which is, hey, what is that sign-off you use for every show from? And it's literally from my favorite Ben Sisko moment. I just love this speech. To me, this speech, it says everything about Sisko. It says that he's strong enough to know that I can't fight right now and I have to back down, but he's confident enough to know that he'll fight through this and that he'll be back, and that he's knowledgeable enough to know that, you know, through all the searching and in his life, that this is the place where he belongs after a lifetime of being with Starfleet. And I just love that this is kind of the moment where, you know, we talked about it before, Rick, with one of your picks about when he's connecting with Bajoran.
Absolutely, yeah.
And when he says that this is the place I belong, I just love that moment. I love how much this feels like a moment from an old Western, which is just basically the setup for this frontier station anyway. So this is my number one, and I'm curious what you guys think. Rick, what's your take?
It's fantastic. It's a brilliant speech, and it just then sets the whole episode a little bit into focus that this was the plan. He's actually in control again, and even though when they're overwhelmed with Dominion ships and the station looked like it's been taken, he's still in control. You know, and it's part of his plan, and he's coming back. And I think especially when you couple it with the baseball on the desk later as well.
Yeah.
It's like, he's coming back. And
yeah.
I mean, Call to Arms to me, I think is my I guess my second favorite kind of cliffhanger, if you want to call it that. I think that is almost that's an episode that shouldn't work. There are like 25 storylines in that episode. You know, that they just like, how did they? And none of it feels rushed. You know. Everything from like Rom getting married to this, it's amazing. It was funny. I sense checked kind of all of my picks with my best friend, this guy named Steven, who's a huge, obviously Trekkie. Surprise. And and when I told him what this episode was going to be about, as we were talking, basically, an email popped up from him. And it was a YouTube link, and I clicked it, and it was this speech, right?
Brilliant.
So I guess great minds think alike. But it's just this speech is as you guys have both said, he's a realist, right? This is the situation. This he has to leave the station, but there's a larger plan, and because of their sacrifice, they win their first whatever it is that they destroy the shipyards, right? So it's a fantastic Ben Sisko moment, and the entire you come back to season 6 and you're just like, how's he getting his hands back on that baseball?
Exactly. This moment does it all for me. So let's jump into some secondary system picks here and see what just was on the outside of your guys' list. Rick, what do you have on your list?
I can live with it. I can live with it on my list because I think that obviously it's a fantastic episode, as we discussed. And I just love that little end part. And I've had debates about this. To me, it always meant he maybe can't, but he's just trying to convince himself.
Right.
Yeah, I did have... I had Paradise Lost, his scenes with Leighton in the office, and that which I thought was fantastic.
Oh, that's a great one. Yes.
And one that is one of my all-time favorite Sisko moments. I didn't know if it quite fit the list though, but it was Bada Bing Bada Bang, just for the end where he sings with Vic Fontaine.
Totally, that's on my
list. That's maybe more of an Avery Brooks moment. I don't know, but it's a brilliant moment. It's just awesome.
I think Sisko also has a fun side, right? Yeah. And we forget about it. And it's things like in Bada Bing, Bada Bang when he does when he sings and he enjoys himself, which is so much fun to see.
Yes, yeah, and there's so much going for, and a very prophetic song as well. The best is yet to come.
Yeah,
true. Carlos, what's on your secondary systems list?
Well, mine, I had Bada Bing, Bada Bang. So way to go, Rick. Thanks for stealing my thunder yet again. Next time we do this, I want to go before you. Okay. I have I did obviously Call to Arms because I had thought about that, one of my favorite episodes, and Steven sent me that link. I did have In the Pale Moonlight, but I thought it was too obvious, but yet it's so integral to all of Trek. My moment in The Pale Moonlight that I was going to choose was the very end when he just says, "Computer, delete log," right? Because that to me, you even said it, right, Jim? But like, there are 85 different moments. Like, it could have been the moment with Garrick in the turbo lift, which we talked about, I think, when we did the turbo lift episode. It could have been the moment with Dax, which you picked, which I think is fantastic, and that whole dynamic with Dax. But to me, it was that very moment at the end, because that's the wow moment for you. He's he's an accessory to murder. He's done all of these things. No one knows what he did. But he decides to delete it, so there is no record of it, which I think is amazing. The only one that I think that I'd like to highlight is I was going to pick the beginning of season 7, and I don't know exactly which episode to pick, but something that we don't ever talk about is that Sisko is kind of only half human, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that's something that no one ever talks about. And in fact, I hadn't really thought about it until thinking about these moments. He's not human. He's not fully human. If we say that Spock's a Vulcan, right? Yep. Essentially, Sisko's a wormhole alien, right?
Yep.
And it's amazing, but it never really comes up in conversation. And so I wanted to kind of pick that moment that, because, here I am, a Deep Space Nine fan of 25 years, really only having that thought. He'd be like, oh yeah, he's an alien, as I was thinking about this. So I wanted to pick something that really highlighted the fact his alien heritage, his wormhole prophet heritage, which I think is fascinating and something that, again, that no one really talks about.
Yeah, it's a great point. You just don't think about it, but yes, he is only half human.
He's only half human. So Jake's only like a quarter. Jake's like a quarter prophet.
That's right. Yes, he. Hey, maybe he'll join him someday in the Celestial Temple. My secondary systems is almost everyone was picked. I had past tense, I had captive pursuit, and I had Rapture was one that you mentioned it, but you didn't pick it. Pretty intense. And then my last one, I love this moment. It's from A Session. I think this is one of the best Sisko episodes, and it's at this is the episode where he accepts being the emissary, and at the very end, he just when he knows that he's going to accept this, at the beginning, they kind of show some people coming up to him and asking him, hey, can you bless our child or do this? And he's a little uncomfortable. And at the end, they come up and ask him, hey, will you bless our child at this ceremony? And he smiles and he just says, I would love to. Thank you. And he's kind of almost giddy, and Kira's smiling and he's happy. And they just cut away on that scene. And I love that moment for Sisko when he knows, man, I really am the emissary to these people. So, and I remember that moment for me in the series was like, wait a second, he's actually the emissary? Because up until that point, I didn't think that's where they were going with this thing. Yeah. So really, really brilliant. And again, we could keep going on Sisko forever. So, but now it's time to move on to our regeneration cycle.
Computer, activate regeneration cycle. Alcoves beta and gamma.
All right, so I got a lot of good stats to break down here, but before we do that, let's do a quick recap of the picks. Rick, run through your top 5 Ben Sisko episodes.
Right, my top 5. At 5, I had Sisko's speech in the Marquee Part 2 about the problem is Earth. At 4, I had him dressing down O'Brien and then just noting that he could have stopped O'Brien anyway, and how that showed us the change in the rules. 3
in captive pursuits.
Yeah. 3 self-sacrifice to save the future in past tense when he steps forward and takes on the role of Gabriel Bell. 2 with Waltz when he's totally in control with Ducat. And at 1, it was time to be the villain for the uniform.
Nice, very nice.
Fantastic. That list is incredible. All right, Carlos, how about your 5?
My 5th is for Sisko the Captain.
Yes, I was going to say, make sure you include your subtitles. I love those.
So 5 is Sisko the Captain, and the episode was the Maquis Part 2. Same exact pick as Rick, that monologue to Kira. My number 4 was Sisko the Friend, and the episode was Rejoined, and it was his chat with Dax. My number 3 was Sisko the Emissary, with episode being Sacrifice of Angels and his kind of his plea for help to the prophets. My number 2 pick was Sisko the General, Favor the Bold, and it's his hail / speech to the crew right at the very end of the episode. And my number 1 Ben Sisko episode is Sisko the Father, with the episode being In the Cards, and it's the captain's log that closes out the episode.
Fantastic. So good. All right, and my 5 really quick were The Circle, with Ben Sisko leading the way with a little bit of manipulation of the Bajoran general, and then breaking the rules at the end of that episode too, when they're evacuating the station. My number 4 pick is Paradise, where Sisko climbs into the box to prove a point. Resist. My number 3, In the Pale Moonlight, where he's going back and forth with Dax on planning his eventual malfeasance to get the Romulans into the war. My number 2 was For the Uniform, same pick as Rick's number 1. And then my number 1, Call to Arms, my favorite Star Trek speech, where Sisko says this is the place where he belongs. So, all right, let's break down some of these stats. I got a lot of them here. We've got, so the season breakdown, only one season was not represented. That was season 7. So I'm glad you brought that up at the end, Carlos. And then there was 1 pick each from season 1, season 3, and season 4.
Right.
And then there was 4 picks each from season 2, season 5, and season 6. So pretty well spread out in terms of the highs and lows. And round 5, we all had season 2 picks. And in round 1, we all had season 5 picks. So, and then some of the other breakdowns here, we've got how many? So we've got 4 Sisko speeches. We have 4 times where Sisko's breaking the rules, and we had 2 scenes where he was sitting down with Dax. So you got to love that. No, 5 times where he was breaking the rules, because I forgot Captive Pursuit. All right, those are the stats for this week, and I love breaking that down so we have a little bit of context for what we talked about. But as we do every week, we've once again entered a temporal causality loop. So before we can depart, it's time to hear from you.
The Enterprise has been caught up in a temporal causality loop. And I suspect that something similar may have happened to you.
All right, so our last episode was a topic that everyone has an opinion on. Really easy to throw a list together, so we knew we were going to get a ton of feedback, and we did. So for this week's temporal causality loop, instead of going through a few standard lists, because there's a lot of similarity in the lists for our top 5 two-part episodes, instead I'm going to call out a few more statistics and then highlight just a couple of unique picks. To no one's surprise, the Best of Both Worlds, which was number 1 on my list, was on a vast majority of the list, 71% to be exact, and was the number 1 selection on 53% of the submitted list, which is pretty amazing, but also pretty expected because that's an all-time great episode. And I have to say, I was a little surprised by how popular the 2 DS9 and Oberyn two-parters were. I mean, I love these episodes, and one of them was on my list, but those episodes are Improbable Cause, and The Die is Cast, and In Purgatory's Shadow, and By Inferno's Light. And those two-parters were mentioned on a whopping 65% of the submissions, with Purgatory and Inferno leading the way by being mentioned on 35% of the list. So that was a pretty high number. And the only other episode that was on as many as 35% of the list was TNG's Chain of Command, which oddly we didn't even bring up on the show. That's the beauty of Trek Ranks. We didn't even talk about it, and obviously it's a great episode, but it's just one of those ones that didn't come up on the show. But it was on 35% of the list that were submitted. And in terms of some unique choices, we had 1 vote for Dark Frontier from @PhilStalkers on Twitter, and I love that episode, so I wanted to mention that. And we had another solo pick came in from Brandon Shea Mutala, who was a former guest host, and he was the only one to pick TNG's Descent, and he had a pretty good 5 words and a hashtag. Oh my God, it's lore, hashtag the Sons of Soong, which is pretty great. And then we had 1 more great solo pick from Adam Hunault, a 2-time guest host, who submitted Voyager's The Killing Game, which I think is a totally underrated episode, so I love that one. So with that recap of our favorite 2-part episodes, we have once again easily pulled ourselves out of this week's temporal causality loop. And as always, we want to thank everyone for all the amazing responses to Trek Ranks. Keep the list coming so we can retweet them. This show's better when we're hearing from you, so we love getting those on Twitter. And we also want to hear from you. So put together your own list of top 5 Ben Sisko episodes and give us a call and tell us your list. You can call us at the Tricorder Transmissions at 609-512-5527. That's 609-512-LLAP. So hopefully we'll hear from you so you can be featured on the next episode of Trek Ranks. And on the next episode of Trek Ranks, we're going to do our first sequel episode. It's a companion piece to a previous episode we did with our top 5 one-off villains. So next week, of course, we're doing our top 5 one-off heroes. And by that, I'll give you a quick example. So first of all, a hero is anyone you want to make a case for. So that part's pretty easy. It can be literally anybody. In terms of defining one-off, what we're looking for is a character that appeared in only 1 episode or 1, 2, or 3-part episode. So someone like Cedo Jaxa, who's one of my all-time favorite characters from The First Duty and Lower Decks, is not eligible. But if you want to make a case for someone like Captain Jellicoe, who appeared in the 2-parter Chain of Command, have at it. I only bring him up because he was on my one-off villains list. I hate that guy, but I heard from a bunch of people who had the exact opposite view of him, so go figure. That's kind of how we're breaking it down. So I like to do this. So Rick and Carlos, you guys have not prepared. Anything jumping out at you guys immediately for a top 5 one-off heroes? Rick, anything?
Oh, as soon as you said the words, I thought, oh man, is anyone going to choose the outrageous Akona?
He's eligible.
And then I thought, probably not.
He was a hero. He was a hero.
Yeah, I mean, I'm one of the guys who actually quite likes Captain Jellicoe.
All right,
so,
there you go. So maybe make a case. How about you, Carlos? Any quick thoughts?
I was going to say Shelby. I love to hate Shelby.
Oh,
but without Shelby, Picard would still be a drone.
Yes, Shelby's a great pick. And that's actually good, too, because somebody could pick her as a villain, too.
Yeah.
If they were so brazen. But they would get an argument for me if they did. So, all right, that's going to be a fun show. I'm looking forward to it. And all right, just want to wrap up here and say a huge thank you to Rick Everson and Carlos Miranda. Awesome show, guys. Hope you had fun. Any final thoughts on your end?
Just a fantastic time. Sisko is so intense. It's brilliant to talk about him.
No doubt.
That's exactly what I was going to say. I'm telling you, Rick, I always like, dude, come on, get out of my head. No, this has been, obviously, I'm a Deep Space Nine guy. This is my all-time favorite Trek, and anytime I get to talk about it, it's a privilege. So thank you very much, Jim, for indulging me and having me on the show again. I really appreciate it.
It was way too much fun. And as you've already heard on this show, let me end the show again by saying thanks for engaging with us here on episode 19 of the TrekRanks podcast. As always, I want to close by saying I'm looking forward to standing with you again here in this place where I belong.
Commander Sisko, you told me about the Crisari before you asked the favor regarding Kira. You could have tried to trade that information for the favor.
I wouldn't do that.
I'll remember that about you.
Hi there, thanks again for listening. If you're cruising the galaxy looking for even more Trek talk, why not visit our good friends Bill and Dan over at TrekGeeks.com? They've got a great podcast that covers a wide range of Star Trek topics, so you're sure to find something you'll love. And if you're in the mood for some awesome tunes, then you really need to head over to 5yearmission.net. The guys are writing a song for every episode of the original series, and each one is absolutely brilliant. So that's TrekGeeks.com and 5yearmission.net. Check them out today.